All right, everybody, welcome to, or back to the Dennis Prager Show. The third hour of my show every Tuesday is the Ultimate Issues Hour. It's a fact of life that people are preoccupied with the daily. We all are. How do I pay my bills? How do I take care of a sick relative? How do I find a job? Where do I move? Where shall I work? What do I do with my troubled kid? It's totally understandable. We are. But in the final analysis, it's the ultimate issues. It's the big questions of life that give you hope, that give you answers, that make meaning out of what is happening. Otherwise, you're just overwhelmed by the daily. That's why, by the way, just as a parenthetical note about my own life, why I find the Sabbath so absolutely indispensable to my life, because some of you will remember there was a very popular Broadway show, Stop the World, I Want to Get Off. And I feel that once a week I do get off the world. That's why I don't broadcast on that day. I don't do work that day. And it is, I believe that it has been the most life-enhancing thing in my life for my lifetime. It's a subject. You know what? Let's do one. We should do a Sabbath subject on the Ultimate Issues Hour. I'm sure I have, but not in a long time. So that's why I have the Ultimate Issues Hour. I love this hour. I was one of those kids. You know who reminds me of me? What was Woody Allen? Albie Pearson. What was his name? Alvy. Not Pearson, right? Alvy something. When he was a kid, and he's sitting in. His mother took him to the psychiatrist. And he's telling this, he's really upset. He's like 10 years old, and he's really upset that the world will one day come to an end. The sun will explode. I wasn't worried about the sun exploding.
All of a sudden, he can't do anything.
Why are you depressed, Alvy?
Tell Dr. Flicker. It's something he read.
Something you read, huh?
The universe is expanding.
The universe is expanding?
Well, the universe is everything, and if it's expanding, someday it will break apart, and that will be the end of everything.
What is that your business? He stopped doing his homework.
What's the point?
What has the universe got to do with it? You're here in Brooklyn. Brooklyn is not expanding.
It won't be expanding for billions of years yet, Alvy. And we've got to try and enjoy ourselves while we're here, huh? Huh?
It's so great. The scene is awesome. So Alvy was concerned with ultimate questions at a very early age. Actually, Woody Allen is. I consider, do you know what I think the most moral film that I've ever seen is? Woody Allen's film, Crimes and Misdemeanors. And it's the last person you would have expected this from, but that's the movie that I would show people. So I have a guest, which is very rare on the Ultimate Issues Hour, so it must be because I have great respect for this man, and in this case that is correct. His name is Steve Leder, L-E-D-E-R. He is one of the most prominent rabbis in the United States. He is the senior rabbi of the Wilshire Boulevard Temple in Los Angeles, and his little gem of a book is More Beautiful Than Before, How Suffering Transforms Us. So, Steve Leder, Rabbi Leder, welcome to the Dennis Prager Show.
Thank you. Honored to be here.
That's very kind. Thank you. So, this is the biggest problem of all, obviously. Let's begin with the God issue, and then we'll move to the human part. So, it's been asked since the book of Job, which some consider the oldest book of the Bible, but doesn't matter. It's an old book. In a nutshell, and I don't care what your answer is, I'm just curious to know your answer. Do you believe that God is good? I do, but you don't have to say that.
You know, to quote the famous play, JB, if God is not good, then God is not good, then God is not God. So,
right.
You know, choose the even or the odd. So, yes, I do believe God is good. That doesn't mean that human beings are always capable of discerning what is good.
No, that's fine. The only reason I ask is that the only people who have an issue, a theological problem with suffering, are those like me, and now you, who believe God is good. So how?
Right. If you believe God is evil, then suffering makes sense.
That's correct.
Right.
Or indifferent.
Right.
Which would be the same as evil.
Right.
Okay. So a good God makes a world with a tremendous amount of built-in and human-caused unjust suffering. So how do you deal with that?
Well, I think we have to address the unjust proposition. The older I get, the more I appreciate God's answer to Job. And I think most of your listeners know the story of Job, but so let's just briefly, this is a guy who loses it all.
Forgive me, I just want to say, because I know my wife is listening, this is one of the rare areas of disagreement between my wife and me. I love God's answer at the end of Job. She can't stand it, but go ahead.
Right. The older I get, the more I appreciate it, and appreciate what a source of strength it is to many people, yet, and I'll get to the yet in a moment. Look, Job is a guy who suffers terribly, and by the book's own admission, in the first verse, which says Job is a blameless man. Mm-hmm. He is an innocent victim, right? And this is very important. He's not suffering. He didn't get lung cancer because he smoked 3 packs a day. He's innocent by the book's own admission. And he's also every man, not a Jew. So he represents all of us, all of humanity. And Job loses it all. He loses his family, he loses his health, he loses his business, and his friends come to him with the traditional explanation, the Deuteronomic explanation. Look, Job, you're suffering because you sinned. You must have done something wrong. And Job rejects that proposition over and over and over again. He knows he's blameless, and so he decides to plead his case before God. And what ultimately is God's answer to Job? In a way, he answers Job with a question, which is this, and I'm paraphrasing. Are you big? I am. Do you keep the seas within their shores? Do you make the sun rise in the morning and set in the evening? I make it rain where no human lives, which is God's way of saying, you are not the center of it all. You are only human, and you can only understand so much. It's not that human beings are completely ignorant of our own circumstances and causation, but we'll never understand it all. And there is a place for faith that somehow, these difficult things that happen to us do fit into some great cosmic plan that's beyond our ability to grasp. And so, and then I think the important part of this is that it can help us move from the most common question related to suffering, which is, why me? Which, frankly, is not an answerable question in most cases. It's just a cul-de-sac. The why question is a cul-de-sac, and you go round and round and round and round and round. You have to move from the why to the what. What, given that this has happened, am I going to do about it? How, given that this has happened, am I going to change my life? Those are the questions that matter. Harold Kushner's book, When Bad Things Happen to Good People, came out 38 years ago now. When people refer to that book, they often say, hey, Rabbi, you know that book, Why Bad Things Happen to Good People?
They always substitute why
they
for
do.
When, but he never wrote why.
No one can write why.
That's right.
You can't write that book.
Mm-hmm.
It's when, not why. And I think that God's answer to Job, in a sense, is you've got to move off of these why questions to the what and the when and the how. Am I going to have a meaningful, purposeful life given these circumstances? And that is almost always possible.
A man in your position sees a lot of suffering.
Yes.
And that's why I think it's important that people in your position write about this. Because in the final analysis, you talk to a parent who lost a 12-year-old child, and you have to deal with it too, not just the parent.
That's correct. I carry it home every day.
I'm sure you do. And that's what if you didn't, you wouldn't have written this book.
That's right.
Book is More Beautiful Than Before, How Suffering Transforms Us. Steve Leder, the author. And the book is up at DennisPrager.com. We will be back in a moment. You are listening to the Ultimate Issues Hour on the Dennis Prager Show. but I do give, and then I feel great. It's really, charity is sort of like, not even sort of like, it is truly analogous to working out, which I do after the show today, and I have no desire to do it. None. No, zero. Not a 1 on a 1 to 10 scale. It's a 0. But then when I'm done, I'm so happy I did it. That's so. The only question really is not whether to give; it's to whom. And I'm a big fan of the Salvation Army because they're good people doing good work. So there's a banner at my website, DennisPrager.com, for the Salvation Army. Or if you prefer, just go to Team Prager, T-E-A-M, Prager.org. Either way, thank you so much on behalf of all the people the Salvation Army helps. So it's an odd thing for me to put it this way, but suffering is one of my favorite subjects. But favorite, of course, doesn't mean I'm happy about it. It just means I've always been preoccupied with the problem of it. So when thoughtful people write about it, I take it seriously, and I have a thoughtful man in studio. One of the most prominent rabbis in the United States, Steve Leder, L-E-D-E-R. The book is More Beautiful Than Before, How Suffering Transforms Us. I'm Dennis Prager. This is the Ultimate Issues Hour, the third hour every Tuesday on my radio show. So, sir, you deal with all these people, and you do really, I would say, any clergy. I guess clergy and therapists deal with the most suffering on a daily basis, and policemen in their way, I guess. They deal with evil. You deal with suffering. That's how I'd put it. So, I can't believe you've been with fewer than 100 people who've lost children. Maybe 500 for all I know. Many.
At a certain point, you stop counting.
That's a fair statement.
But you remember them all.
And I believe that. It's those little coffins that must be very hard.
It's all hard.
So what do you tell them?
Well, this book is divided into 3 sections for a reason: surviving, healing, and growing. The first thing I have to do when I'm called in, and sometimes I'm in these situations long before the child actually dies, sometimes not. When it's a suicide, for example, I'm called in, when it's over. The first thing that I have to do is help people survive, literally survive, because virtually every parent I have ever dealt with whose child has died wants to die him or herself, and they mean it. And I have to look them in the eyes and say to them, we cannot die because children die. We have to live. And the first chapter in the book is an old Yiddish aphorism, the title, which is, when you must, you can. And I try to help people grasp this simple but very profound truth about human nature. When you must, you can. I have seen parents survive incredibly, unimaginably painful experiences. By the way, not because they are extraordinary human beings, but because they are ordinary human beings, like you, like me. We all have this capacity to survive when we must, when we absolutely must. And so my first job is to help them survive. And often that's by structuring the chaos, by simply saying, I'm here, which, by the way, I am here are the 3 most important words you can say in that moment. And then structuring the chaos. Here's what we're going to do. Here is when we're going to do it. Here is how I am going to help you. Here is how we are going to walk through this together. So that's the first. Later comes, a lot of time and thought and attention directed at healing. How is it that we are going to recover enough to live and laugh and love again? One of the most important things I can say to people in these early stages, and I make a point of saying it, is I look them right in the eyes and I tell them, look, the most honest thing I can say to you right now that's remotely helpful is this: it won't always hurt this much. It will always hurt, but it's not always going to hurt this much. And they know I'm telling them the truth. It's the most painful thing they've ever endured, but it's not the only painful thing they've ever endured. And then you have to move to the third phase, which is meaning. How do we find some meaning in this? How do we turn a child who was beautiful in life into something that can also be beautiful in death? In a very different kind of way, of course. How do we move forward in some meaningful way? And it's a journey. And, you know, I'm a person of faith, and our faith has something to say about that. Most faiths, credible faiths, do. But life has a remarkable way, Dennis, of reasserting itself. It really does.
Do you, and this is a curiosity question, my listeners who are very familiar with me would know how much I have often said, and it may not even reflect well on me, but a good part of my emotional sanity rests on the belief in an afterlife. Mm. Do you venture into that?
You know, it's interesting. My sermon on the High Holy Days this year was about the 11 things I've learned about death after 30 years of being on the inside of it. I've probably, seen 1,000 dead bodies. And one of the things I said is that the afterlife might be real. And I can only tell you this, and it's anecdotal, of course. It's sort of one of the problems with afterlife beliefs is that there's only one way to find out if you're right, and it's impossible to come back and verify it, right? So none of us know for sure. But I can tell you this. I have heard too many credible accounts from too many credible people to dismiss the idea of an afterlife. Too many people feeling that there's a presence, that every year on his birthday this happens or that happens. I've heard too many credible accounts from too many credible people to dismiss it.
The book is More Beautiful Than Before, How Suffering Transforms Us. The phone number here is 1-8-PRAGER-776. I'm Dennis Prager, and this is the Ultimate Issues Hour.
Are we going back to afterlife?
If you want to. With a voice. I have good calls.
Okay, whatever.
I could do an hour. I've done hours on afterlife.
Okay.
I admit it. It keeps my sanity. This is Bing. He's the best. What did you say? The show is on the air now? See, even my producer doesn't realize how relaxed I am on the show. I knew I was on, and I'm having a little side chat with the rabbi here, and it makes perfect sense. Everybody gets to hear what's going on. He wanted to know if we're going to continue on the afterlife. Why would I hide that from my listeners? Anyway, everybody, welcome back. The Ultimate Issues Hour. Rabbi Steve Leder is the author of More Beautiful Than Before, How Suffering Transforms Us. And any clergy person is going to be preoccupied with the suffering issue. I mean, not necessarily philosophically, just realistically. He is philosophically and in reality. So did you want to add something there?
Well, I just wanted to say this for those who aren't sure about the afterlife. As a person who has seen, close to or more than 1,000 dead bodies, any of us who've really looked at a dead body and knew that person, it's so obvious that there is so much more to us than our corporeal beings. Mm-hmm. It is so obvious that there is so much more to who we are than our bodies, that our bodies are vessels for something that is far more definitionally who we are.
Yeah.
And
with you.
To me it's so obvious that our bodies die. But that other part of us, which I would call a soul and some would call spirit, it doesn't really matter what you call it. That certainly is not buried in the ground with our bodies.
I'm with you. Anyway, God's not physical, so why is the only reality physical? All right, let's take some calls. Simpsonville, South Carolina, and Bill. Hello, Bill, Steve Leder, and Dennis Prager. Hi.
Hey, Dennis. How you doing? It's so good to talk to you.
Thank you.
I didn't hear all the conversation going on. I just got on the phone, on the radio about 20 minutes ago or something, and I know my son passed away 3 years ago from a drug overdose. I just want to know when you get over it. Sometimes I get the feeling I'll be sitting in my recliner downstairs, and I just get the feeling that he's coming down the stairs to me to say something to me, and I look up there, and he's not there.
Yes, exactly.
I'm not sure what my question is.
No. You asked a good question. You asked a very right question. And how long? What was it? How long will you be enduring this pain? Is that what you're asking?
Well, I think so, but I know it's going to be forever, and I know it probably gets better over time, but sometimes it doesn't seem like it's better at all.
That's right. Before the rabbi answers you, I just want to say to both you Rabbi Leder, and to you, Bill, I met a man many years ago who lost his 21-year-old son in a car accident, and I asked him, this was about 8 years later, and I said, did anything help you? He said nothing, not therapy, not religion. There was one thing that helped him. And I said, and obviously I wanted to know what it was, and he said, meeting with other parents who lost children. And I'm only raising that with you because maybe that is one of the vehicles toward a certain resolution which can never be full. But please, Steve Leder, go ahead.
Bill, first of all, I'm really sorry for what you're enduring. And one of the things that might help is to think a little bit about grief and how it works.
Okay, hold on there. I want you to be able to finish your thought.
Yeah, it's important.
But the only reason we can have you on is because people sponsor the program.
Okay.
So we'll be back in a moment. Dennis Prager here. This is the Ultimate Issues Hour, the third hour every Tuesday. Subject is suffering. Steve Leder, one of America's prominent rabbis, is the author. More Beautiful Than Before is the book. It's up at DennisPrager.com. The subtitle, How Suffering Transforms Us. Well, you were about to respond to a very, very pained man in South Carolina. Lost his son to an overdose 2 years ago. Go ahead.
Bill, I think one thing that might be helpful is to, at least from my experience, share with you a little bit about the process of grief. Anyone who thinks the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line does not understand grief. Grief is not a linear process. This is not something that gets a little better every day until it's gone. It's not like a cold or a rash. My experience has taught me that grief is much more like waves. It just comes in waves, sometimes unexpectedly, sometimes huge rogue waves, sometimes periods of calm. And much like when a wave is coming at you, the more you try to stand up in it, resist it, fight it, the more likely it is to just knock you down. And conversely, when you are hit by this wave and you just give into it and float with it, just float with it. Let it move you around. And then, when you can, stand up again. It makes it a little easier to withstand. And so I think give yourself permission to feel it when it comes, to float with it when it comes, to sit with it when it comes. And the other thing, which you've done just by making this call, there's a piece in my book which is titled The Prisoner Cannot Free Himself. Dennis alluded to this earlier. Reaching out to others for help, to talk, to listen. Others who have suffered the loss of a child. This helps as well. But the death of a child is like an amputation. There's a missing piece for the rest of your life. And there's no two ways about that. But you can adapt. You can learn to live and to love. And by the way, to help others who are further behind you on this road of suffering, to reach back and to help others who are a year into this process or 2 years, not 3 years into this process. I also want to recommend a book to you, not mine, a book called A Broken Heart Still Beats. It's a remarkable book. It's an anthology of writing put together by two women, both of whom had children die. And it's an anthology of writings by writers who had children die. For example, Robert Frost had 4 children who died.
Wow.
And it's such a helpful community of voices.
A Broken Heart Still Beats. What a great title.
It's a community of voices, Bill, that I think will resonate with you and kind of help you stay afloat during these
and finally,
difficult times.
can we both say to him that we believe that he will see his son?
Well, I believe you're experiencing your son now. You said you feel him in a way coming down the stairs, so I don't think that stops.
Right, fair enough. But we're talking. I'm talking at least post-death. I do believe that there is a reunion. I don't think a good God makes a world where he extricates you from those you love forever. All right, Bill. I'm very touched that you called. Is Robert in Fort Washington, New York. Hello, Robert. Dennis Prager and Steve Leder.
Hello, Dennis and Steve.
Hi.
Hi.
First of all, Dennis, I just want to thank you so much for your show and the production of your show. It's top-notch.
Thank you. That has nothing to do with my producer or engineer, so I take it as a full compliment. Just thank you very much.
I was just picking up a slice of pizza with one of my son's friends, my son who died 3 years ago. One of the best things for my wife and I in the last 3 years has been the blessing that my son's friends stayed in touch with us.
Oh, wow. I never would have thought of that. That's so powerful. I got the chills.
I'll share a quick insight with you. This was said by a man whose 30-year-old daughter was killed in a car accident, and he had a similar experience that his daughter's friends showed up, and he said, it changes nothing, but it means everything.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
It does. We've gone to therapy, private and group. We've really worked at keeping our relationship together, both my wife and I, and then also with our surviving son. Mm-hmm. And one of the single biggest issues, or blessings, has been the fact that all of our son's friends have stayed engaged with us. We're talking approximately, I guess, a core group of 5 and a bigger group of 20 or so that reach out to us randomly.
May I ask how your son died, or would you rather not say?
Well, my son was in a car accident, and then after the car accident, he was a passenger, and the driver was drunk, and when they hit a tree, rather than stay and have the ambulance come and pick them up, they panicked and they ran. So my son actually didn't die from the car accident. He died because he didn't go to the hospital and get a CAT scan and an MRI and get proper treatment. So he bled out over a period of a week.
Oh, my God.
So it was totally avoidable. But he didn't want his friends to get arrested. So we're just moving on from that. Because ultimately, whether someone gets an overdose, a car accident, being shot, a trip and fall, a child dying is a child dying.
Yeah, all right. Listen, I have to take a break. You're one of those that I was telling the rabbi during the break I have learned so much from. Very powerful stuff. The book is more beautiful than before. Touching title. We'll be back in a moment. Leder, prominent rabbi in the United States, is on. He's wrote this brief book that is up at DennisPrager.com, More Beautiful Than Before. It's a good title, How Suffering Transforms Us. And what I'd like to do is just summarize a couple of the calls here because of the time factor, and at least let the thought get on, even if you might not be able. So here's a woman in Tampa, Florida, Ariane, says she became happier since her metastatic cancer diagnosis. Her gratitude has increased, and she chooses more clearly.
Yes.
That resonates completely with you.
Completely. Look, there are pain, while not worth the lessons it brings us, neither is it worthless.
Good one.
And
that's right.
And one of the things that pain does is it edits our life for us. It strips away an awful lot of nonsense. It strips away people who don't matter. You know, I often say to people, it sounds very glib, but it's also quite true, that when you're suffering, the people who matter don't mind. And the people who mind don't matter.
Good one.
Let them go. So, you know, pain and suffering recalibrates your priorities. It tells you who your friends are and who they are not. It gives you a greater appreciation for the magnificence of your own body. You know, Marshall McLuhan said we don't know who discovered water, but it wasn't the fish, right? It's only when we're jerked out of our reality that we have some appreciation for it. We discover good health when we lose it, and we forevermore respect our bodies and take care of ourselves and are grateful for every day. I'll never forget a 40-year-old with 3 children who had a heart attack said to me in the hospital, when I asked him what he learned, he said to me, even a bad day is a gift.
Heidi in Atlanta lost her 4-year-old 4 years ago. She's tired of being told how strong she is. It's okay to be weak. I assume you resonate.
Absolutely.
That was what your wave analogy was. Great.
Yes.
Don, Susan, Michael, and Dan. It's my hourly suffering not to be able to take all the calls. Steve Leder, it's been an honor and a joy to have you on.
Thank you. For me as well to be here with you.
Thank you. More Beautiful Than Before is the book, and it is up at DennisPrager.com. One way to minimize suffering is to help those who do. That's why I'm a big fan of the Salvation Army, and ask you to go now and make a donation. Their banner is up at my website, DennisPrager.com, and I will see you tomorrow.